Actually, the contract increases are very close to inflation rates. There is a big difference between the public sector and the private sector when it comes to contract labor. Um, in virtually all municipalities in the state of Connecticut, municipal workers, and this includes teachers on the education side, and on the education side, even the administrators they're all unionized, and the unions exist in the public sector under a very, very specific set of laws. Um, there are arbitration rules that go along with them. There are things that they're called, without getting too technical, mandatory subjects of bargaining. There's a whole list of things that are mandatory subjects of bargaining, which means that an employer like the town of Bethel must bargain with the union in order to make any changes at all. So working conditions, wages, benefits, retirement plans, these are mandatory subject of bargaining. And what that means is the town can't just unilaterally say, you know what, we got a problem with the budget this year, so we're going to have to change the whole medical plan. So sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but you're going to have to pay a lot more for your health insurance. The private sector can do that, but the public sector cannot. In the public sector, every one of those factors has to be bargained. So actually, in my experience, negotiations are always very, very tough. And really, we've had, I think on the town side, all of our unions in 2010 and 2011, when the economy was at its worst, they accepted 0% wage increases for a year. And since then, they've really bargained for only inflationary increases, so cost of living increases, which is about it. So for the future, I'm going to predict that as we go through bargaining sessions, which usually occur about every 3 years, I don't really see wages increasing by more than the rate of inflation in the future, maybe by a fraction of a point, but not much. The hardest bargaining is going to be over retirement plans and health benefits, especially health benefits. Health benefits have been increasing by double or triple the rate of inflation for the last 5 to 7 years. And that is the hardest thing to negotiate, because obviously unions don't want to give up what they have. It's very difficult to shift cost shift cost to the employees when they're not getting big raises. In the private sector, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, we're going to give you 5% raise, but you also have to pay a lot more for your health insurance." It's kind of a trade-off. It really doesn't happen that way. So that is a very difficult part of the negotiation process. But that's what we're doing, is we're trying to control benefits costs more than anything else.
Now, I'm sort of adding my own little follow-up question here.
Yeah, sure.
Who actually does the negotiating with the various unions?
Well, it's actually done by a team. The team in my office consists of me, and I don't attend every session. So, some of the things are done a little bit in the background, but the key things I will be involved in. But the team will consist of me, Bob Kozlowski, the town comptroller, Phyllis Kansky, who is the town's HR coordinator and director, and our labor attorney. We use an outside labor attorney because it's a very complicated world out there. You have to have professional help unless you to really protect the taxpayers' interests. On the union side, they will have a similar team. They will usually have, depends on the unit. It might be anywhere from 2 to 5 people as they've been elected by their unit as a bargaining team. And they will have a labor attorney and a representative from their labor union. And there are presently 4 labor unions that represent town employees and 7 on the Board of Ed side. So it's a complicated process.
I have heard, or I've seen comments online along the lines of that certain of the employee union contracts were like back-end loaded. Or I think that was the term that was used, basically essentially saying that they agreed to give up bigger increases in the short term in promise for much larger increases later, and that we're getting hit with some of those now. Is there any truth to that, or is that a misunderstanding?
It's kind of hard to say. there is a little bit of truth for that. I remember Mrs. Yansky talking about the teacher's contract. The last teacher's contract was negotiated um, when the economy was really at its worst. So the teachers union agreed to normally they get what's called a GWI, or general wage increase, of say 1.5%. And then the way the teachers' worlds work, there's also what's called a step increase. So the longer they're employed in the system, there's a slight increase going from year to year. So you combine those two. For a couple of years, the teachers gave up some of that. I wouldn't call it back end loaded. I think they just went back on what would normally be a cost of living increase in the last year of the contract. But the comment really kind of speaks to, I think, the political environment, because a lot of politicians for decades have done that. They've they kind of call it kicking the can down the road. Give the taxpayers a break today, but then appease the union by putting something farther out, whether it's a bump in their pension benefits or something like that. We really, really try not to do that. That is all that does is it increases the liability farther down the road. So we have been extremely resistant to anything like that kind of kicking the can down the road.